The crazy story how I accidentally started a gang brawl in New Zealand that the police shut down the street for. Alright, we're heading up to K Road now, Karawang Road, I don't know how to say it so I'm not going to try. But basically strap in because you're about to hear one of the fucking wildest stories you've ever heard. Alright, so I'm here now at the moment at a place called K Road. So K Road is one of the entertainment precincts in New Zealand. That's predominantly, I guess, known Sydney and like a King Street in Melbourne. It's a little bit seedy. There's a whole lot of clubs around here, like different along the street. And we'll go through a couple of them as we get walking. But basically, I have a tale that is one of my most viewed on TikTok and is a story that is probably the most requested when I'm on podcasts about how I accidentally ran a show here that kicked off and provoked a gang war that was going on at the time, and it came to a head here. The police, about 30 or 40 police, shut this whole thing down, and I'm going to add some photos and videos and stuff at the end of this video, or during the video as I talk about it. So we're walking up now to the place where it happened. So let me start at the beginning. So basically, I had booked a show for a bunch of Australian rappers in New Zealand. So we were doing a tour for a record label called Brotherhood Records. So at the time we'd done Sydney and Brisbane, and everything had come off without a hitch. Where I should probably precurse this is that I had done a lot of Australian hip hop stuff, what people would call gang rap. It was called like gutter rap at the time. And I had done probably 20 to 30 shows in Australia, in Melbourne especially. So when I first started doing it, there was a whole lot of like backlash where people, like a lot of venues didn't want me to do stuff there. I got rejected by heaps and heaps of venues. I started doing it in my own venue, Empire, and that was successful. I was doing anywhere to 800 to 1,000 people to these shows. So I sort of lent into it a little bit more and got more and more involved in it because I could see like the potential of like where it was going to go and how it was going to blow up. Some of the artists that we're talking about are guys like Hooligan Hash, Young and Lives, 1-4, the 046, I'm with the MC, even Melbourne, a rapper that I've done a lot of work with. But basically, I lent into it and I was doing shows, heaps and heaps of shows. When I first started doing these shows, one of the things that would happen was we'd constantly get threats on people like, you know, gang violence, or maybe someone was gonna get shot. We'd get like warnings where people would say, be careful because, you know, this guy's gonna get shot, or this guy's against this guy, so you might have trouble with this gang war. And we'd be precautious. We'd make sure they weren't entered indoors that no one knew about. We'd make sure they had security all the time. We did this stuff, but over time I did like 21 of them. And I started to like get so used to the threats that they were idle to me. So I didn't pay attention to them anymore. At the beginning, I was super scared. I remember like times where I'd roll up, park my car around the corner, cover my face, walk into venues, all this sort of shit, like very precautious kind of attitude, I guess, towards it. But over time, as nothing happened, I thought they were just idle threats until I came to New Zealand. So what I didn't know about New Zealand was that their gang culture here is very, very strong. I did know that, but I thought it would be worse in Australia. I don't know why, but I was wrong. So gangs in Australia predominantly are bikie groups or nationality groups like Middle Eastern gangs, or, you know, like Chinese gangs or triads and things like that. But they're very, very secretive. You don't see them realistically just walking around, and that's because of laws and stuff that we've implemented into the country, where people can't wear their patches or they can't like present as gang members, or just because gangsters are smart and they don't want to be known because they want to make money. So what I didn't know in Australia is that they have street gangs, and the street gangs are very, very present in New Zealand everywhere. And it's something that I noticed very much so when I got here, but it was something that I wasn't used to, I wasn't accustomed to. So we don't like sort of have feeder gangs, or we probably do, but they're under, like, you don't really know about or hear about them. Here, they wear patches and colours. There's a whole like sort of blue and red, and there's New Zealand only gangs like the Mongrel Mob, gangs like the King Cobras, gangs like Black Power, that are sort of like, they're not just around bikers. They look like bikers, they present like bikers, but it's not revolved around bikes. They've got bikes, but it's not a bikie gang, it's effectively just a gang. But they look very similar to Australian bikie gangs, but they're not, they're street gangs. So what happened was, I booked this show in New Zealand, and basically what I wasn't aware of is that there's this thing called 501. So 501s is something where Australians who have committed a crime, and they're from New Zealand or from Samoa or Tonga or whatever, they can get sent back. They can get sent back to their country. So if they do more than, I think it's like 18 months jail, don't hold me to it, but it's around that. If they do more than sort of 18 months jail, our government sends them back to where they were originally born. And it's kind of a wild rule, because basically there's guys that are like, you know, born in New Zealand, move over to Australia in 6 months, and then at 28, 29, they get sent back to these countries they don't even understand or know. Because of that, there's been a rise of Australian gangs sort of coming up into New Zealand. So I won't go too far into that, because this is not what that's about. So this is about the story about how this whole situation kicked off. So basically what happened was, I was unaware of this. Like, I'm a promoter from Melbourne who isn't involved in gangs. So I had zero understanding of, I guess, the landscape of the rivals and whatnot. And in Australia, you do have to know this sort of stuff, but like not heavily, but you definitely do have to know what's going on. You don't know the lay of the land. But I was lazy, didn't really think about it, came in here, I guess blindfolded, and it was a big mistake. So what I had done was I'd spoken to a friend of mine who works for a big company called Mushroom, and I'd spoken to them about that I wanted to do this show, and he was like, yeah, cool. So he hooked it up with me to the venue that they do a lot of work with, and this venue is called Neck of the Woods. So Neck of the Woods is basically a venue where they have like up and coming bands, or bands that, like, you know, when they're first starting out, they have anything from rap down to DJs, down to like every sort of style of music. It's like a live music venue. So I got him to secure it, he cut the deal for me, didn't really think about anything that would be an issue, and basically from there, what I had done was, coming through, so basically what I had done is lock this in, and I put the shows up for sale, and we started selling it, and we sold 250 tickets, I think, before we got here, and then it ended up selling out. And when we got here, there was a couple of little murmurs, like as I said, like there was always these idle threats, but again, I ignored it. I was like, fuck, you know, I've heard this before, so whatever, I just moved on from it. And the story begins, there's another story that's a part of this, but I'm not going to tell it, where we had to collect money for an after party at a club across the road called Illusion. That's another story altogether, which I'm not going to tell, which is fucking just as wild as this. But just because I don't want to drag this on for longer than I already have, we're going to start with this story. We go through there, we collect the money for the after party. We then come here for sound check. So sound check is basically what happens when the artists come down. They make sure that all the sound is up to scratch. They can perform, the foldbacks are fine when they're singing. And so basically like to make sure that when the venue's full, that the sound's fine for them when they're performing, so they can put on the best show they possibly can. So as we did that, we rolled up. And as we rolled up, two big boys came, these two massive guys. And I'm like, oh, okay, sweet. So I kind of knew at that point they were probably there for a reason. I would say some form of security or protection or whatnot. But I didn't say much because that was how I did really well in this scene, was I didn't ask a lot of questions. So we were sort of hanging around, I met them, they were big boys, but they were very, very friendly. And then we ended up heading back to the hotel where they went and bought some drinks and stuff like that. And then I continued to do like the door list, make sure that everything was in tow. Everyone who was, you know, playing had freeze. Everyone that was playing had people put down as their guest list. So I did like the background work. So we're sort of sitting there, and then in my head I'm like, okay, cool. Well, as I always do, I sort of step off from these positions when the boys started to drink or like, you know, start to party with their friends or crew. So what I did was, sorry bro, you all right, man? So what I did was I basically sort of separated myself, and then I decided I was going to catch a lift into the venue by myself. So I got in the cab and I sort of started to head over. But as I got downstairs, the big boys that came to sound check and the rapper, they were there too. So like, we'll just jump in the cab with you. I'm like, whatever, I'm not going to say no, right? So then basically from there, I jump in this fucking cab, and the boys, they're smoking and shit, obviously affiliated to some form of gang. Again, not going to say because it's not relevant to the story. So they're smoking in the cab and stuff, and the cab driver made some pretty smart executive decisions on the spot and basically just allowed them to do it. They were drinking these things called Cody's, which was kind of funny. They'll tell me a story about these things called Cody, like 12% bullet cans. And if you drink more than two, you end up in court. I think they call them court case in a can. If you're from New Zealand, you'll know about all that shit because it's like an ongoing joke here. So we get to the venue, and as we get to the venue, I've got to go get riders. The riders is the alcohol that is provided for the artists for the shows. So I run across, and we'll go over there because I might as well. So I run across to a joint just over there, just behind that bus. So I run across over here, and I let the boys walk into the venue. So as I'm walking across here, I basically come along, and I have to go get, I was like a couple of bottles of vodka, some different bits and pieces, mixes and shit like that. So I run over to Kiwi Liquor, and I'm none the wiser of what's going on. So as I roll up, I buy out the vodka and whatnot, and then from there, I head to, in this store here, I head back. So I've got a full bag, my backpack's full of stuff to run over to the venue to set down in the green room. So as I walk past, there's a lot of people sort of hanging around the venue, but I'm oblivious to what's going on. So I walk down the staircase, I take a left, and I walk into the green room. There's a whole bunch of the support artists there. I'm meeting, greeting them, hey, what's going on, blah, 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 good to see you down here, blah, 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 blah. I'm setting up the mixers, we're about to have a drink. The main artist is sort of saying hello to him, familiarising himself, saying good luck, rah, rah. As that happens, there's this fucking awfully massive noise, and that noise sounded like pool balls getting thrown down a fucking hallway, right? And it's like boom, 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 and it was smashing, yelling and screaming, and I knew at this point something fucking bad was going on. So I basically got up and locked the door of the green room, and I knew there was no like way to get out backwards. So I was I'm not gonna lie, when it was going on, I had zero idea what was going on. I kind of was aware that we're under attack or there was some sort of big fight and the show just started. but I couldn't guess how bad it actually was. So I'm freaking the fuck out, doors locked, thinking how am I going to get out of here? Hopefully this doesn't escalate. When one of the guys gets pushed into the back room that we know, and then from there, one of the guys who's running as a support artist, he's like, I kind of knew this was going to happen. And I'm like, what do you mean you knew this was going to happen? And he's like, oh, I knew that there's been people talking about this, like, because what you guys have done is that you put someone who was associated to a gang on tonight, and all their friends and family were coming down. But this is like another gang's area. So basically what you've done is this has been like a sign of disrespect. At this point, man, my heart sank. I'm like, you're fucking kidding me. So I had no idea. I was oblivious to this. No doubt in my mind some of the artists that I was with knew, but I was like, they haven't told me for whatever reason. Just, cultural reasons, I'm guessing. Or just maybe they didn't think it was that big of a deal, but no one had told me, no one had brought it up. So then I'm locked in this fucking green room, no way of getting out the back, and I'm thinking to myself, fucking hell, like there's a rival gang outside, but they're about to kick off and fucking trying to get in here. Well, I'm in here, locked in this room with all these other dudes that they're potentially trying to get. So I sit in the room, I just kind of pretend it's not happening for a bit, and it was pretty fucking obvious. I was trying to act cool and calm, collected, so the guys who were playing, oh bro, you're fucking scared the shit out of me. The guys who played there, trying to be cool, calm and collected, so the guys on support were cool, calm and collected, but it was pretty uneasy. There wasn't a whole lot of talking going there. It was a bit of fake news, So anyway, after about half an hour, I walked in to the venue, and there were still people performing and shit. I'm like, okay, maybe this is blown over. Maybe this is normal here. And as I walked out, and sort of looked out to the crowd, and the crowd was like, didn't really seem to give a fuck about it. The manager walked up, he's like, hey, the police want to talk to you. And I'm like, what do you mean the police want to talk to you? What the fuck? And then he's like, the police didn't have a chat to you about what's going on. I'm like, oh, bro, I don't even know what's going on. I just walked out of the green room. I was sort of trying to play it down. So I walked out just behind me of that stairwell, and when I got out here, there was no shit, and I'll show the videos and the photos so you'll be able to see them. There was about 30 or 40 police all lined up here in the middle of the road. There was cop cars on both sides, over this side and over that side, and the whole road was closed down. And on the other side was a rival group, and they were making animal noises. I'm not going to say because I have said it before and people picked what it was before. In saying that, this is not that hard. You can literally Google K Road shut down by fucking gang fight, and you'll see that all the articles about what happens. But anyway, so they're across there, and there's bikes and stuff. There's people being arrested. They're all patched up and shit. And when I walk out, the biggest thing, then I turn backwards, and I noticed that all the windows in this venue here, and all the windows in here and here, are all completely smashed. They're smashed into pieces. So I'm like, what the actual fuck? It looked like a war zone. I've just walked out of, right? So I've walked out of this war zone, and then the cop comes up to me, and effectively I think that he thought I had something to do with this. So I'm like, basically sitting there going, oh bro, like I don't really know what's going on either. And he thinks I'm lying, so he's being real angry at me, pretty aggressive. And then eventually gets to the point where he does believe me. I'm like, I'm a music guy from Melbourne, I've got nothing to do with this, I don't know what's going on. And he was like, but at the end of the day, because the police here in New Zealand don't have guns and shit, so it's a little bit different than in Australia. If this had happened, within 5 minutes, there would have been SWAT teams, we call them soggies. They would have come down on horsebacks and black suits with guns and shit, and they would have closed this fucking thing down in a second. But here, it's different, so they don't do that. So they were standing at the front, they're like, this is on you, this is your show, you've got to close this down. I'm like thinking in my head, well, how the fuck am I going to close this down? Like, there's literally a fucking gang war. I don't even know the gang names. I've never even heard of them up until this point. You've just told me. How the fuck am I going to stop this? And at that point, I could just hear bikes and stuff running around. This guy's like, you can hear this is serious. It's like, we need to figure out a way to make this not escalate worse, because right now we've got one gang on the one side with a bunch of whole broken windows trying to get into that venue, where there's a whole bunch of gangs protecting someone or something in that venue. So he's like, you need to figure out a way to make this not get worse. So I'm like, okay, fuck. So I run downstairs and I'm like, I'll just tell my artist we're going to cancel the show. So, and the guy was basically, the cop actually said to me, do you want to cancel it? And I was like, no, because I didn't want to deal with it. Once he told me that I had to do it, I was like, well, can we just let it run? Maybe it won't be that bad. And then he basically said, I think you need to reconsider that. And the manager pulled me aside and said, you have to shut this down. So I'm like, fuck, all right. So I run downstairs and I'm like, I'll tell my artist we need to shut this shit. So I get downstairs and they've come all the way from Australia to sold out show, and they're fucking pumped. They're pumped to play this show. So basically, they say no. They directly in my face say, nah, we're not shutting this down. And I'm like, fuck it, fuck this cops. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Like, I'm so fucked here. So then one of the big boys is standing to the side of stage, the ones that came down to their sound check. And basically, I walked up to him, I'm like, bro, like, I reckon I would have been shaking at this point. I was like, bro, I need a favor. And he's like, what? He's like, what up? Like, what do you need? And I was like, bro, there's all these police outside. There's fucking like another gang out there. Like I don't know what this is doing. I'm just a promoter, man. I've got nothing to do with this shit. Like I'm not involved in any of this stuff. I'm freaking the fuck out. But the police are worried that if you guys come out, it's gonna get worse, or that these other groups are gonna keep trying to get you. He's like, nah, it's chill, it's chill. I'm like, it's not chill, bro. It's fucking. I'm freaking the fuck out. And then he goes, all right, he goes, I'll do your deal. He's like, you go tell the coppers that if you let the bros play a couple more songs, I'll get everybody out here and it'll be good. Nothing's gonna happen. We're just gonna walk away. And I'm like, fuck. So I run up to the cop and I go to the cop. I'm like, look, I've just talked to the sergeant at arms of this gang, which is a word that I never thought I'd have to say in my line of work. And I said, he said, if you guys let the main artist play a couple of songs, everyone's gonna leave peacefully. And he was like, you got 15 minutes. So I run downstairs and I get the sound guy and I'm like, fucking quickly chuck on the main artist. I push the main artist on stage and I say, boys, you got 15 minutes, got 2 songs each, that's it. Then we're gonna pack this shit up, we're gonna get the fuck out of here because this is not cool. So they grab the microphone and one of the artists at the time, he grabs the microphone and he starts off saying probably the worst thing I reckon you could have said in this situation for me. So I'm standing against the back wall and I'm sort of like watching what's going on and he jumps on the microphone and he goes, the police are here to try to shut down this gig. And he's like, but you know what? Fuck that. And I'm like, oh, here we go. And then he's like, when I say FT, you say P. And he gets the whole crowd shouting FTP. For those that don't know what FTP means, it means fuck the police. So I've got my hands on my head and I'm like, oh my fucking God.
FTP, because we didn't give a fuck with it, we didn't give a fuck, FTP, 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 FTP. Just in my career right now, is what I'll tell you right now. Let's go, one time.
At this point, I'm like, I've done enough. So I run to the green room, I pack all the piss in my bag, alcohol, and then I try to bail up the stairs. And as I bail up the stairs, the coppers are standing there, and the main one comes up to me and goes, where the fuck do you think you're going? And I'm like, yeah, what's up?
What's going on? What's up?
Thanks for saying hello.
Yeah, you have a good day.
You too, bro. So I'm trying to do the run and the guy's like, you're not going anywhere. He goes, until every single person's outside this video. And I'm like, sorry, outside of this venue. And I'm like, fuck. So I have to go back in. So I go back in, and as I do, I'm watching the artist. I'm sort of standing against the back wall. And at this point, the guys turn the light on, like the sound and lighting guys turn the light on, because I was like strictly 15 minutes. So they turn the light on, and as soon as they turn the light on, people start throwing glass at the sound guy. So they're throwing glass and plastic and shit at the sound guy, booing and stuff, because they wanted to keep going. And I'm like, what the fuck do we do? The venue manager's like, what do we do? I'm like, I don't know, man, I don't know what to do. So I turn the fucking lights off, just let them keep playing. So they did, they turned off the lights and let them keep playing. And at that point, I'm standing against the wall, and I was like, thinking I blended in, but to be fair, I was probably the only like Anglo-Saxon white guy in this venue. Majority of the people there were like Islander or Maldives, and minus me and maybe 2 other blokes. So I'm sort of, which those 2 other blokes were the managers. So I'm up against the wall when some people start walking up to me and they're like, man, you gotta let the bros play, you gotta let the bros play. I'm like, bro, what do you mean? I'm trying to act like I've got nothing to do with it. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm not involved in this. And at that point, the penny drops. I'm like, if these people know who I am, then there's a fucking high chance that these other people know who I am outside. So I'm wigging the fuck out even more than I was before. So anyway, basically I go up to that big boy again and I said, bro, please, like I know that this is kicking off, whatever, but I'm like, I need this to shut down. So the boys play one more song and they do it again, whatever, and then he stays true to his promise and he shuts it down for me. So he pushes everybody outside and then basically one by one, I'm sort of sitting down there. They all come out very, very slowly, and to be fair, it wasn't that bad, but everyone just scattered. So I'm just there by myself. So everyone, even the guys that I was with, all the artists and stuff, because they're on the piss, obviously, they just scatter. One of them goes back to another venue, watches the show, because they shut down the after party too. So we actually had an after party at the venue over across the road at Illusion. But the coppers said that they didn't know what was going on, so they said we couldn't perform there either. So one of the artists went off with his crew, and the other artist went off with his crew, and they sort of did they did their own thing. So I'm standing there by myself. Coppers go do the walkthrough. They like sort of, long file, single file go down. They push everybody out, and then the guy comes up to me and goes, yeah, all good, everybody's out of there, you can go now. So I'm standing there by myself, like literally on that corner. All the windows are smashed in. There's fucking tables and chairs everywhere, looking like a war scene or an apocalypse scene. And I say to the cop, I say, am I safe? And he says, it's not our problem. And I'm like, you're fucking kidding me. So I'm watching these guys, they're still lurking around, like there's shit going on. Everybody knows, there's all these venues along here. The whole fucking town knows, K-Road shut down, no Ubers can come in, no taxis can come in. And there's still people walking around, I guess trying to get like a sniper or whatnot. And these guys telling me it's not my fucking problem that if you're safe or not. So, because I guess they were blaming me because I fucking effectively accidentally started this without meaning to. So lucky for me, there was a DJ called DJ Nature, who's like a big R&B DJ. He lives in Brisbane now. Shout out to her because she's a fucking lifesaver. And she's like, hey, come with us, we'll put you in the car, we'll drop you at the hotel. Come off at the hotel. And at that point there, I was like, the whole time I had my head down, I'm worried about getting fucking murdered. And then I get to the hotel, and I'm like, I actually physically get in there and I start laughing. I'm like, laughing my head off. I'm like, I can't believe that just happened. What a fucking wild yarn. So then I'm on the blow to my mates, because it's only like 9 p.m, so I think it got shut down like 11 here. And all my mates are like, this is fucking insane. This story's fucking insane. So I go to sleep. The boys that I'm with keep partying. I end up sending fucking all the luggage of one of the boys to some fucking pad somewhere, some like clubhouse, so he can party for another 4 or 5 days. And then the other one I see very, very briefly in the morning. We sort of debrief. And at that point, I'm like, I don't want to be here. Like, I'm wigging the fuck out, right? So I'm like, I don't want to be in this city, like all this country. So I book an earlier flight to 8 p.m. And then what I do is I got on the fucking, I literally got on a ferry. So I went down to the viaduct, and I literally got on a ferry and went across to an island, across the thing, where it was like, I don't even know what the name of the island. I stayed there for 8 hours. I ate, I hung out, and just like rode around in a scooter. And then basically waited till 5 p.m. when I caught the last ferry back across, jumped in an Uber, went to the airport. And as I was walking along the airport, I had my head down, but I was wigging out that the police were going to stop me or I was going to get arrested. And then second to that, every time I saw anyone that sort of looked half suspicious, I was thinking that they might be there to attack me. I don't think I've ever been so paranoid in my life. It was like I fucking smoked 10 bongs in a row. Like, that's how much I was wigging, but I hadn't. So then I finally got into New Zealand, and I got out of there, and then I was never going to come back again, but I've been back twice since. And I legitimately, it's one of the scariest and craziest tales I've ever told. And and there's no positive note at the end. I'm like, even though I love it and it was amazing, I do not want to get close to that or ever do that again. But that actually is one of about 3 crazy stories that happened on that trip. Some that'll never be told because it would put myself and others probably in danger. And there's other parts of it too that may get told, but then probably need some time because some of those guys I still know or are still active and whatnot. So even that story that I'm telling you is basically 85% of the story, but that's the way it goes. Sometimes that's when we do this sort of shit, we're going to sort of, you know, open up about what the back scenes look like, and now I'm retired, I'm able to do it a little bit more, but sometimes we can't tell the full story, unfortunately. If you like that story, you think it's crazy, you think it's wild, please subscribe, follow, and comment on my YouTube channel. I've got a whole bunch of other shit like this, just as crazy, just as fucking wild, you can go check out, so go do that. And thank you so much. Thank you, New Zealand, for having me again.